When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into the boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the water grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading.
행복한 안식일입니다.
Happy Sabbath.
교회를 찾아주신 모든 분들 진심으로
I welcome all of you who's joining our worship today.
교회 장로님,
Elderly Kim,
Kim, Sydney, and
Sydney,
Louis. Welcome to
Bruce. Welcome to our church.
감사합니다. 그래도 출타 중인 가족들이 많이 있습니다.
We have a lot of families traveling us
자, 일정들을 잘 마무리하고
who also joining us as online worship, and I hope
여러분 혹시
for the safe trip.
극심한 실망감을 느껴보신 적이 있으십니까?
Have you ever been disappointed so badly?
얼마 전에
Recently,
실망감이 아주 커가지고
I had a trouble sleeping
여러분들에게 실망.
because of self-disappointment. And don't get me wrong, I haven't disappointed you.
그래서 밤잠을 설치.
It was a self-disappointment, and I had a trouble sleeping.
근데 어떤 사실에 실망을 하다 보니까 사람이 게을러지기 시작하더라고요.
And these disappointments became a
이
negative
실망감은
mindset
우리한테
to me.
많은 부정적인 열매를 맺게 합니다. 그래서
And that is why
다루어야 할 문제.
we have to deal with this issue
이
today.
실망감을 어떻게 해결할 수
Disappointment.
있을까?
How are we
제자들 역시
going to
이러한
overcome?
실망감을 마주한 적이 있었는데
Jesus' disciples also had faced disappointments,
함께
and we want to take a look at how they
요한복음
overcame
6장을
those.
함께 펴겠습니다. 요한복음 6장입니다.
Let us open John chapter 6.
요한복음은 누가복음 뒤에 있습니다.
And the book of John is right next to the
6장은
book of Luke. And chapter 6 is right next to chapter 5.
근데 요한복음 6장은요. 이 전반부에는 예수님이 보리떡
In the first part of John chapter 6
천명을 먹이신
tells the
사건이
story of Jesus
이
feeding
사건으로 사람들이
5,000 people
아주
with 5
크게
bread
예수님께
and 2
열광했습니다.
fishes.
아, 이분이 바로 우리가 기다리던 누구다.
And as we all know,
메시아이구나.
because of this incident,
그래서
Israelites went
사람들은
crazy for
예수님을
Jesus.
그들의 왕으로
Yes,
삼고자
this is our
그런데
Messiah.
예수님이
This
그걸
is the
어떻게
King.
했어요? 그래, 내가 너의 왕이다 하고 그것을
They
받았어요.
thought Jesus is the Messiah they've been waiting for.
예수님은
So they
그들의
went to
설정하게
put
무너졌어요.
Jesus as their king.
예수님은 혼자
But
산으로
Jesus broke
떠나셨어요.
down their hope
그리고
miserably.
제자들을 다 흩어버리셨죠.
Jesus left
거기에
the
모였던
mountain by
사람들 다
himself
흩어졌습니다.
and scattered away
이때
his
제자들의 마음이
disciples.
어땠을까요?
Can you imagine the disappointment of his
너무너무
disciples?
간절히 원했던 일이
Jesus was supposed to become a king, but went back to being homeless again.
여러분 제자들이요. 예수님을
Can
어떻게
you imagine it?
따르냐면 자신들의 모든 것을 버려가면서
You know, disciples left everything behind them.
부모를
They
버리고
dumped
쫓아갔어요.
everything.
하던
They
일을
left over their
부모를 쫓아갔어요.
family. They left over their job.
제자들
They
안에
gave up everything.
예수님이 높임 받는
So
것을
inside them,
보기를 너무 원했어요.
disciples wanted to see
그것이
that Jesus being lifted.
자신의 욕심을 이루는 데 있어서 아주 중요한 기회, 절대적인
And
기회라고.
it was pretty important to get
그런데 예수님이
paid
이런 제자들의
for their
마음을
all
아시고
troubles.
그들에게서 떠나신 것입니다.
Jesus knew it,
요한복음
so he
6장에는요.
left.
이 제자들의 마음이 어떠했는가를 보여주는 여러 가지
In John
단서들이
chapter 6,
이 단서를 좀 살펴보면서 이 제자들의 마음이 이랬구나. 우리
there's a few clues shows disciple
16절,
disappointment.
6장 16절.
First clue is in verse 16.
우리 함께 읽겠습니다. 아주 짧은
Let us read again.
시작.
When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake.
지금 이 분위기가 어떤지를 잘 보세요.
You look at the atmosphere.
지금 이 이야기를 요한이 써 내려가는데
in John chapter 16,
어떤 단어들을 선택해서
John is
상황이
writing
어떻게 되는지를 잘 보겠습니다.
this event, this
보니까
incident,
보셨어요?
and he had used his word very carefully.
그리고 또 하나는 뭐냐면 바다에 내려갔다.
There are two words,
여러분 날이 저물어
evening came and
이
went
날은요,
down.
어떤 날이었냐면
Evening came.
오병이어의 기적이 있었던 아주 찬란한
You know, the great miracle day of 5 bread and 2
근데
fish is
설렘과
over.
기대가
Excitement
다 사라져.
and expectation were gone,
날이 저물어.
and the evening came.
여러분 사실
In the concept of the day and night of Hebrews, it was the start of a new day
시작하는
because sundown
사실 이 날은
is starting a new day.
그래서 어떤 날이어야
However,
되냐면
the beauty of the day
설레고 기대가
disappointed,
그런데 이
and the beauty of the day disappeared.
아주 쓸쓸
It's a new day. It has to be a beautiful day, but it has been disappeared. Can you
사실
feel the writer's
마태복음과 마가복음 이
emptiness?
장면을 뭐라고 표현하냐면 그냥 배를 타고
Then they
갔다.
went down to the lake.
근데 요한복음은 뭐라고 표현하냐면
You know, book of Matthew and Mark just describe this scene as they went to take a
그러면
boat.
예수님은 어디
But
가셨어요?
John is describing it as they went down to the lake.
예수님은 기도의 장소 하늘과 가장
On
가까운
the other hand,
장소로 가셨어요.
Jesus went up to the
근데
mountain.
제자들은 어디로 갔냐면 삶의 애환이 가득 찬
Jesus went up to the mountain close to heaven, where the place of prayers. And the disciples went down to the lake,
제자들의 마음들이
where their sorrows of life exist.
두 번째는 17절이에요. 한번 찾아보십시오.
And the second clue is in verse 17. Can you find it?
제가 이미
On verse 17. Actually, I have already have
같이
highlighted it.
읽겠습니다.
Let us
시작.
read together. Where they got into the boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now, it was dark and Jesus had not yet joined them.
뭐라고 표현하냐면 이미 어두웠다라고. 이거를 원어로 그대로 읽어보면 이렇습니다. 그런데 이미
Jesus used to be with disciples all the time,
예수께서는 아직도
but he haven't come to them yet.
이게 사실 원어 그대로 읽으면 이렇게.
Let me read this verse in the original verse. By the way, the dark came. However, Jesus haven't came to them yet.
예수님은 항상
Do you see the
제자들과 함께
emptiness John felt?
그런데 예수님이
Can you see the emptiness his disciples
오시지
felt?
않으셨어요. 쓸쓸함이 느껴지는
Not only was the seat of Jesus empty, but the disciples' mind was empty as
예수님에
well.
대한 자신의 욕심,
Wrong expectation
그것을 그릇된 기대를
and
가지고
disappointment
실망,
from their own great about Jesus
그리고 그것은 제자들의
blinded the
공적
disciples'
시야를 아주
spiritual
어둡게
sight.
만들었어요. 제자들의 마음은 쓸쓸함으로 가득.
And their mind were filled
그리고 이
with
제자들의 마음은
emptiness.
아주 잘 표현된
And here
사건이
come the incidents which describes their mind so well.
18절이에요.
It's on verse 18.
큰 바람이 불어.
A strong wind was blowing, and the water grew
이걸
rough.
원어로 사실 읽어보면 이렇습니다.
A strong wind blew
그리고
and
큰
wave
바람이
got
불어서
high.
바다가 소용돌이치기 시작하였어요.
If we look at this in the original verse, it goes, a strong wind blows, and the lake started to swell. The Sea of Galilee,
빨간색 동그라미로 이렇게 표시되어 있는데
yes, this is the Sea of Galilee.
여러분 대단하십니다. 갈릴리예요. 이 사진을 이렇게 그림에서 왼쪽 편, 저
And
위쪽에
on the left side of the picture,
지중해 이렇게 써 있죠. 그쪽이 지중해고요. 이 가운데 이 동그라미 빨간 데가 갈릴리. 그 밑으로 이렇게 쭉 내려오는 게 요단강. 이렇게 여기가 이제 팔레스타인 이 지역을 이렇게 따로 딱 떼놨는데.
sorry, picture is too small for me. I can read it.
그 갈릴리 호수의 그 수면의 높이는
However, the Sea of Galilee, can you expect is deep?
약 200m 정도 가량 낮습니다.
It is about
해수면보다
200
훨씬
meters
낮은 곳에 호수가 있는 거예요.
below
그
the sea
주변은 뭘로
level, which is
둘러싸여
about 120 meters.
산지로 둘러싸여 있어요. 그래서 종종
And it was surrounded by the hills.
바람이 어떻게 불까요? 그럼 이제 언덕이 있고
So there often came strong wind on the Sea of Galilee,
지중해에서 이렇게 넘어와가지고
and waves
내려오면서
becomes
이렇게
high.
소용돌이를 치면서 이렇게 가기 때문에
The winds comes down through the hill
파도가
and passes by, So, yes, it happens time to time.
이 몰아치는 파도, 거친 바다는
These crashing waves
갈릴리
and rough sea
호수에 일어난 일이기
happened on the Sea of Galilee.
사실 이 이야기는
But
서로의
it
마음에
is
일어난
actually happening in the mind of the disciples as well.
제자들 마음이 이와 같이 아주 소용돌이 치고 있었어요.
Their mind were also swirling like a
내가
hurricane.
직업도 내어버린 채 예수를 따랐던
They started to regret their decisions, all the things left
잘못된 것
behind.
아닌가라는
Countless homeless nights.
생각들 마음속에 막
After all the times of following Jesus,
그러다 보니까 무슨 일이
it all
일어나냐?
comes back to their
내가
mind
혹시
as a
예수라는
mistake,
남자한테
miscarry,
사기당한 것은 아닐까?
failure.
라는 생각.
Now, it even comes as scam by the man who claimed to be the Messiah.
예수님을 향한 큰 실망감은
But at the end of the day,
이제 점점
just a homeless guy.
배신감으로 바뀌었어요.
And this huge disappointment
예수님과 함께
against
했던 아름다운
Jesus
축복의 시간이
became
전혀
the
기억이
belly
나지 않아요.
of betrayal.
제자들의 마음에 큰
No more great miracle moment,
그들의 마음은
no more beautiful memories,
가득했어요.
no more blessed and touching moments. It is all faded and forgotten. No, let me refresh myself.
내가 원하던
None of these things happened
기도가 안 이루어질 때,
when the waves are high
기도가 응답되지
on
않을
their minds.
하나님이 안 계신 것처럼 느껴질 때,
When our prayers are not
내
getting
인생의
answered.
나른 점을
And when we feel like God is not there,
내 삶의 파도가 있는 거죠.
that's the time we have a high
여러분
wave
이
in
이야기가
our
어떻게
mind.
결론이 나는지 아십니까?
You know how this story ends?
금방 끝나요.
You know, to be true,
21절을
the closure of this story comes pretty quickly.
여러분
It's on verse 21. Let us open
요한복음 6장 21절에
John chapter 6, verse 21.
금방 이 이야기의 결론이 납니다.
The closure of the story comes so quickly here.
6장 21절이에요. 하셨으면 아멘 하시겠습니다.
Chapter 6, 21.
우리 함께 읽겠습니다. 시작.
Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading.
파도가 잠잠해져. 그들이 가려던
Okay, here's the end of the story. The wave got calm, and the disciples reached their destination. By the way, the Bible left the interesting fact in here.
다른 개혁
It says,
즉시로
immediately the boat reached the shore. They arrived immediately, right away. They arrived right away.
여러분 사실 그들이 가려고 했던 땅은
Are you excited to discover this fact?
상황 속에서 그렇게 멀리
You know, the fact is, disciples were never far away from their destination.
다만 뭐 때문에
They just couldn't get there because of the high waves.
근데 사실은 아주 가까이 있었거든요.
Even it was right in front of
여러분
them,
우리의 시련,
they couldn't get
우리의
there.
삶의 높은 파도는 항상 실제보다
When the waves are high in our
그래서
life,
내가 가려고 하는 데가 사실 저기 있는
trials feels
아주
much
멀게
higher
느껴지게 만든다.
than what it is.
실상은
Even though
멀지
it
않아요.
is right up
너무
there,
멀게 느껴지게 만드는 것이
disappointment,
무엇이냐면
anxiety,
우리의 삶의 불안,
insanity,
불안감,
nervousness
실망.
make us feel so much
이제
far
우리가
away.
주목해야 될 것은 이
Now,
문제가
join me to focus on how this problem has been solved.
어떻게 그들은 곧 그들이
How
가려던 땅에
disciples
어떻게
got there.
파도는 잠잠해졌는가?
How the wave got calm.
결론부터 이야기하면 모든 문제는 예수님의 등장,
To give you the shortcut,
예수님을 배로 영접.
it all starts by Jesus' appearance and welcoming him.
이렇게
Verse 19.
19절입니다. 함께
Let us read together.
제자들이 노를 저어
When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were
제자들이
frightened.
10여리쯤 갔다고 이야기해요. 10여리쯤의 길이는 어느
The disciples went about 4 to 5 miles on a lake,
5에서 한 6km 정도 된다 이렇게 얘기해요. 갈릴리 호수의 폭이 약
and the width of the Sea of Galilee is about 7 miles. So they were in the middle of the lake.
그 가운데 폭풍 속에 괴로워하고
They were suffering in the middle of the lake, and they were suffering in the middle of the storm.
아주 구체적인 시간
At this moment, Jesus came to the
예수님이
disciples.
언제쯤 그들에게
At
다가가셨는가
Matthew
시간을 알려주는데
Chapter 14, it tells us exact time when he came. Matthew chapter 14, 25 tells us the specific time of Jesus' appearance. It was a fourth watch of the night. Let me read it.
3, 4경은
Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea.
대등분했어요. 그때 당시 사람들이.
Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake.
1경, 2경, 3경,
The
4경.
fourth watch of the night is between 3 to 6 a.m. So let's say it's about 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So it is just before dawn,
어떤 때요?
which is the coldest and darkest time of the day, just before the sunrise.
이제 곧 아침이
However,
밝을 때이기도 해요.
it almost is a time of hope where the morning is alive.
광명의 아침에
It is a time of the border between the darkness of the night and the brightness of the morning.
여러분 하나님은요.
God came to us
그때 오세요.
in time like this.
아주 내가 왔으면 하는 그 밤에 딱 안 오시고
He never comes at the night that I wish
희망이 없어지는 듯해 보이는 그 시간.
Him to be there.
그러나 사실
But He comes when our hopes are disappearing. And that moment is right before the sunrise.
이렇게
But the problem is that the disciples didn't recognize the Jesus who came to them.
못 알아봤다.
They just couldn't recognize him.
뭐라고 이야기하냐면 이렇게.
Matthew thought Jesus were a ghost when Jesus walked down the lake.
놀라.
In Matthew chapter 14:26, when the disciples saw him walking on a lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear.
유령이다. 여기서 우리가 하나 배워야 될.
You know, one thing that we have to remember here is that
우리가
we
영적인
cannot recognize Jesus even when we see
알아요,
him,
몰라요? 모른다는.
when our
여러분 종종
spiritual sight is
하나님을 보면
blinded.
믿겠다는 사람들이 있어요. 맞습니까?
You know, we often see some people saying, I will believe in God when I see him.
제가
You ever seen anyone like them?
올린 적이 있는데 한 2개월 전인가 어떤 분이 댓글을 달았어요.
You know, because our sermon is on a YouTube. About 2 months ago, some
말도 안 되는 소리 하지 마라.
people have brought a
나는
comment
보여야 믿는다.
of my sermon. How could you believe something that never exists?
근데 문제는
I only gonna believe when I see it.
봐도 하나님인지 모른다.
There are this type of people. I will believe in God when I see Him.
나는 하나님 봐야 믿어. 지금 예수님이 제자들 앞에 나타났거든.
They are saying they can't believe God because they didn't see.
못 알아봤어요. 뭐라고
But
생각했어요?
there is something
영이구나.
they are missing out of it. All through they see God, they won't recognize Him.
판단해야 되는 일이.
All through they see God, they
그렇기
won't
때문에
recognize Him.
성경적으로 나는 하나님을 봐야 믿어.
There's an issue remaining for us to figure out if it is God or not when we see Him.
근데 여러분 예수님이 제자들에게 다가오는 이 장면이요.
You know, when you picture the moment Jesus approached the disciples, it is very touching moment.
내용에서 마가복음은
It's in Mark
이렇게 표현해요.
chapter 6:48. And here's how Mark wrote.
마가복음 6장 48절입니다.
Mark 6:48.
바람이 거스름으로
He saw the disciples
제자들이
straining
힘겹게 노 젓는
at the oars because the wind was against him. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on a lake. He was about to pass by them.
마가는 뭐라 그랬냐면 예수님이 제자들이 뭐 하고 있는 걸 봤대요?
You know, the Mark is saying Jesus saw the disciple straining at the oar.
풍 속에서 제자들의 모습을
He saw suffering through the storm.
제자들은 예수님께 실망했다는 이유로 예수님을
But disciples couldn't recognize Jesus because they were disappointed in Jesus.
예수를 못 본 거예요.
They didn't see Jesus because He was out of their sight.
실망과 원망으로 가득한 제자들을 향한
But Jesus never let them out of His sight, even though He was out of their sight.
예수님이 제자들이
He was
자신에 대해
watching them
원망하는 거 알아요.
and approached them
그래서 그들은 예수를 안
when they
보고
needed Him most.
그러나 예수님 뭐 하고 있어요? 그거 다 아는데 제자들을 보고 있어요.
He never
그리고 그들에게 정말 필요한 순간
let them out of
그들에게
His sight.
다가가셨어요. 여러분, 우리의 삶에
And He
시험이
approaches them when they needed Him
그래서 우리
most.
안에 실망감이 가득.
when the life of waves are high enough to blame God
우리를 향한
and turn over our eyes often,
기억하시길 바랍니다.
He never leaves us out of
한
His
가지
sight.
재밌는 것은 여기서 제자들이 얼마나 무서웠을까 하는 겁니다.
Let's take a closer look at
마태복음
here.
14장으로 좀 가보면요.
How much the disciples were scared. Let us go back to Matthew chapter
그가
14.
바다 위로 걸어오심을 보고
When the disciples saw him walking on a lake, they were
무서워하여 소리
terrified.
지르거늘.
It is a ghost, they
여러분
said,
진짜 얼마나 무서웠으면
and cried out in fears. Wow,
그
they were so scared.
소리를 질렀어요.
So they screamed in fear in the storm.
폭풍 후에 배를 타보신 적이 있으십니까?
You ever been in a storm? Or you ever been in a storm in the middle of the sea?
파도가 막 치는 배를 타보셨어요?
Or have you ever had a ride high waves? High waves?
축하드립니다. 그러죠. 저도 타고 싶은데.
Okay, cruise.
제가 파도가 높이 이를 때 이제 배를 탔던 경험은 없는데
I never have experience
요즘은 유튜브에 참 다양한
riding a boat on a high waves,
배를 탑니다.
but I often ride a boat
함께자리
sail the boat
이런 거 가끔씩 타거든요.
by the YouTube.
그러면 그 큰 배가 진짜 이렇게 배가 이렇게 갔다가
And a big ship rises all the way high and drops all the way down. It is a scary moment.
어부들도 노를 아주 힘겹게 젓고 있는 그 파도 속에서
As we all know, many of the disciples were fishermen. They are professional boat
파도보다 더
sailors.
무서운 게 이제 오는 거예요.
But they are in fear. They are terrified.
저는 사실 파도만 봐도 엄청 무서울 것
They
같아요.
were so scared, so they screamed for fears in the storm. They were already in a fear zone of the
소리를
storm,
질러요.
and they felt even greater fear and cried out loud.
두려움의 존재보다 더 큰 존재가 나타날 때
When
시선이
a
바뀌게 됩니다.
bigger fears approaches us,
폭풍이라는 두려움 속에 있던 제자들이 더 큰
our
두려움을
sight
느끼면서
changed.
소리를 지르고 그러니까 예수님의
Appearance of Jesus
폭풍의
was shocking enough
어려움을 넘어설
to
만큼
overcome the
제자들에게
fear
너무
of the
사실
storm.
충격적이었다라는 거예요. 근데 이게 그래야만 해요. 예수님의
It is
등장은
very interesting situation,
우리 삶에
but it
예수님이
had to
나타난다는
be
것은
that way
원래 그런 거라는 거예요.
because that's how Jesus come to our life.
예수님이 불의를
What do I mean?
제자들에게
Jesus walked on a lake and got closer to the disciples and said,
뭐라 그러셨어요? 요한복음 6장에 보니까
what have you said? On John chapter 6?
내니 두려워하지 말라.
It is I, don't be afraid.
내니 두려워하지 말라 하신대.
But he said to them, it is I, don't be afraid.
여러분 이 말
It is I.
처음 느낌이 어떠세요? 아주 친절한 예수님처럼 느껴져요.
From this praise, we can notice a couple feelings. First, it is kind Jesus. It is me, don't be afraid.
근데
Very soft
이
and tender.
나다 두려워하지 말아라. 그 따뜻한
But
폭풍우가
this
담담해질 수 있는 걸까요?
is not the only reason.
이
He
영어 성경에
said,
보면
it is me, don't be
괜히
afraid.
두려워하지 말라가 조금 더 좀 자세하게 나와 있는데 이거 좀 원어에 가깝게 나와 있는데 20절에 보면 이렇게 말씀하세요.
Let me read verse 20.
NIV입니다. But he said to them,
But
it is. 다른 성경에 뭐라 그러냐면 I am.
in the other version of the Bible saying, I am. And that's it. NIV say, it is I.
boy. 뭐 이렇게 나와
And many other translations
I am a girl.
say, I am. Period.
I am 다음에 뭐가 나와야 돼요? 이제 흔히 말하는
After I am, we are expecting something, some discrimination, some explanations of who this person is. But I am,
이게 헬라
period.
말로 에고 에임이에요. 따라해 보시죠.
In Hebrew,
에고
it is ego eimi. Would you repeat with me? Ego eimi.
에고 에임이가 무슨 말이냐면 나는 존재한다 이런 말이에요.
Ego eimi
출애굽기에서
means I exist.
모세가 하나님에 대해서 당신 누구냐고.
At the time of Exodus, when Moses asked God what his name was, God answered, I am that I am. And that is ego eimi as well.
뭐라고 하고 나타나셨냐면
When Jesus appeared to the disciples who were in fear, he came saying, I am that I am.
사실 저는 이걸
It is a little difficult to
이게
understand
뭐야?
this verse.
도대체 이게
First
무슨
time.
말이야?
Well, what is this? It doesn't come to our mind that well. I am that I am, so don't be afraid. What does it really mean?
특별할 때 등장하는데 7번 특별히
And this ego eimi appears several times in the book of John.
신학인데 요한복음에서
And it takes a very important position in the whole context of the book of John. There are 7 verses in the book of John where ego eimi appears. I am the vine, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the door of the ship. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the good shepherd.
예수님이 스스로 자신을 제자들한테 그리고 사람들한테 소개하실 때 뭐라 그러냐면
This is a way how Jesus introduced himself.
근데 제자들에게 나타나실 때
I am this, I am that. When he said those, he used ego eimi.
I am 하고 나타났어요. 마태복음에서는 요한이 기록하지 않은 제자들의 고백이 나오는데 제자들이 예수님을 배로 영접한 다음에 뭐라 그러냐면 당신은
In
진정
the book of Matthew, it tells us disciples' testimony that John didn't write.
이게 무슨 얘기예요?
After they welcomed Jesus on a boat, they responded, Surely you are the Son of God. It's on Matthew chapter 14:33. Truly you are the Son of God.
제자들에게 나타나면서 하신
In other words,
뭐냐면
they said to Jesus, You are really that one. Overall, what Jesus was saying with ego eimi at this moment shows Jesus is a trans concept, being Jesus is a
나는
divine
너희들이
being.
원하는 왕이 되는 것을 거절했지만 나는
And this is a story about Jesus who refused the position of the king. He is the one who is much greater than the worldly king. He is showing that he is just not what everyone thinks, but he is the one who governs of heaven, controls everything. The praise I am, don't be afraid, tells us, are you disappointed in me? But don't worry.
나에게 실망하였냐?
I'm not trying to accomplish what you are expecting, but I am accomplishing the kingdom of God.
땅에 이룰 것이야라는 이야기. 제자들이요 이렇게 다가온 예수님을 어떻게 했냐면
The disciples welcomed Jesus. Verse 21. Then they were willing to take him into the boat,
마태복음 예수님이 배에 오르시니까
and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were
근데
headed.
예수님이 배에 오르니까
The book of Matthew says when Jesus got on a boat, the wind stopped immediately.
어떤 예수님이요?
When they welcomed Jesus,
친절한 예수님.
all the problems were solved.
그
Their
예수님
disappointment was not the problems anymore.
근데 이 영접한다라는 말이
Their boat was no longer empty when God was on a board with them.
그냥 예수님 welcome to our boat 이 정도가 아니에요.
Not the king they were expecting, but the king of heaven was on board with them.
그러면 실망이 더 이상 문제가 아니에요. 이 배에
At that moment,
하나님이 타고 계시고
disappointments won't matter anymore.
자신들이 기대했던 왕은 아닌데
And that is why the appearance of Jesus was so shocking moment.
예수님의 등장은요.
So they can't even see the fear of the storm. Definitely, it was a moment they should scream.
여러분 우리 삶에
We cannot avoid disappointment in our life.
이건 사실 피할
Life with expectations always ends up with disappointments.
실망을 맛볼 수밖에 없겠죠. 그러나
But
우리가 진정으로 크신
When we face a great God Almighty,
그분을
our
내
disappointment
삶의
becomes an appointment
예,
that He never leaves us.
예, 모든 문제가 해결될 수 있음을 여러분 기억.
All problems disappear.
여러분 우리가 해야 될 일은 아주 분명히
Please remember.
예수님을 우리의 배에 영접.
Now, it is so clear that what we
제자들이 그
should do
예수님을 자신의 배에 태워.
among the highways.
그래서 그들이 너무
Just
크게만
welcome
그 폭풍우가
that
가라앉아
Jesus
곧
in our
그들이
boat.
가려고 했던 땅에
Just like the disciples did, welcome Him to my boat today.
I am이라고 말하는 그 예수님을 우리의 삶에 모시는 것으로
I am, ego eimi.
모든 문제들이
When He is on board, all your problems will disappear. You will reach your destination right away.
내 배에 타신 예수님과 함께 이 땅의
I
여행
urge everyone to take Jesus not as a king of the world, but as a king of heaven, and welcome Him in our boat over your life.